Divakar serves as the representative of business resilience services offered by Ernst & Young in the UAE region. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Divakar Pandian.
Good afternoon. Wise is the man who secured his today based on the thought of tomorrow. Wiser is the man who has enabled the wise people to secure the future. And wisest is the person who has enabled the wise and the wiser to have a conversation. So thank you, IQPC, for letting us have this conversation. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to address you guys, and it's a pleasure to be part of the BCM fraternity today. Now, we're thinking about today's event, more in terms of a presentation aspect. I come up with this idea about creating a brochure and having a conversation rather than just presenting a deck and giving you the facts. So may I kindly request you to take out a blue brochure from the goodies bag that we've given everybody, please? So that I would wish to have a conversation with you regarding the business continuity. And this is just to tell you about the page that we are on, but the conversation is based upon the brochure that I have. Right. So considering it's before lunch, and we thought we'll keep a presentation which is a lesser burden, with lesser data, but I think we are successful. We got a lot of data in there. So bear with me and let me try to make it quick as possible. Now, moving forward, so we start with a specific utilities sector. What are the challenges? What are the risks that we've observed in trying to implement business continuity? We're currently involved in developing business continuity with many utility sector firms in UAE. And what are the approaches we assist in developing? So, in terms of background, as you see in the brochure, we're talking about the challenges. The most biggest challenge of today that we have observed in terms of business continuity is the extended enterprise. With the economy, multiple mergers and acquisitions happening in terms of power and utility sector. The company is being acquired, and there are a lot of sister concerns and partners, like the previous speaker spoke about. The ownership of business continuity, the deployment of teams and resources to enable business continuity becomes a challenge. In terms of regulating the implementation and continuing to establish business continuity in two different firms headed by each other becomes a huge challenge. But we see a common trend moving to counter these challenges. Enablement of technology, as a previous speaker spoke about, in terms of importance of technology in today's world, of covering requirements of Internet of Things, and etc. Where the technology is playing a huge role in terms of automating the business continuity. Today, still we see a resource challenge. I think we've addressed that in terms of how we're going to go ahead and face the challenge in the coming days by having more of a academic influence in it. So great steps on that. In terms of changing regulatory experience, so with the market changing and the resources being involved changing and standards and regulations changing, it is difficult for the utility firms to put across of today and manage and implement the business continuity, because the business continuity implementation spans across 6 to 7 months. And in this time when there are regulatory changes happening, to incorporate that and to have a sustenance perspective becomes a challenge as well. Now, in terms of the non-alignment between different aspects, the IT and the business operations, financial, safety and regulatory, reputational aspects, the person who's sitting in the crisis management room or in terms of the command center in the utilities firm, for him to press the red button and raise an alarm is what the provision is for. But the thought for him to go ahead and press the red alarm, as was previously described in the presentation before, is over and over requiring a lot of cultural change in the companies to let the employees inculcate the culture of emergency, crisis, and incident management. And that is a trend that is consistently improving thanks to technology that is being available today. Now we see common drivers. We're talking about strategic drivers, compliance-related drivers in the current business landscape. It's extremely dynamic as of today, and this has led to, if you see, in terms of the recent events and the continued disruption that has been taking place in terms of the response time to these disruptions. If I'm right, the 1940s is when the Death Star is the Latin word from where disaster was derived. And even today is still figuring out how to respond to these disasters, and there needs to be steps taken. Business continuity is a new term and frame coming to forefront, but however has existed for quite a while now. I always say the business continuity is more of common sense in terms of having operations continue, but as they always say, common sense is not commonly found. Anyway, so in terms of the perspective, so what I'm going to walk you through the next part is upon the perspective. So we went to understand the market of global perspective and said, okay, we do a survey of the global information security survey, getting people around 1,800 to 1,900 people and say, what is business continuity to you? What is the mandate that you're talking about? I'm interested in the lower part, 67% says, yes, we understand and information security is on the rise, so they get the alarm. They are respondents, people who want aware of the business continuity rise. And 58% of them say, yes, it is priority for them. 57% of them say, yes, you go to speak to the top management about it. But however, 34% are the only people who agree in saying sophisticated attacks, we have no clue what to do. I'm very sure the number is a lot more. It's a 34% that agrees to say, yes, we don't know what to do. There's a lot more percentage who are not aware of their own gaps and their own risks in place. So this is a current trend which we've got from the surveys conducted. Now let me move on to tell you specifically in terms of utility sectors, what do we understand? This is the global perspective, but moving on to the utility sector, what is it that we understand? Now, we've covered in terms of utilities for the domains. We talked about energy, we're talking about water, electricity, natural gas, power, etc. And these can be commonly put across, say, production, training, transmission, distribution, metering, and retail, which is the end-to-end supply chain of production to distribution. Now, the key changes are happening in each and every sector. There's decentralization is happening, sustainability importance being spoken a lot more. Increasing complexity of the environment. Technology is getting more advanced, however, the absorption into the market is becoming a challenge. There are smart meters, again, a reference to IoT. There are also applications with technologies which the customers are yet to figure out, where the government bodies are finding it difficult to understand how to regulate these particular technologies to enable, to implement them in the market and for business community to be involved. So in these terms of environment, what are we looking at? So what is that is creating across these domains as a lever, as a catalyst to enable business continuity to be implemented? If you look at it as a levers of response, right to the right-hand side, we have a capital agenda, we have smart grid with energy efficiency, the importance for environment sustainability, improving utilities. The reshaping generation mix, this is something that we see that in government sectors and utilities, and private sectors as well, the resources with experience have to keep up with the new generation of technologies operationally and also enable business continuity to it, which is becoming a huge burden on them to understand both new strides and implementing the existing ideas. That is where a simple plan, a simple technology that caters to their understanding is also required. Now, regulatory management and strategic transformation. Now, with mandates coming into play for strategic transformation, we see more and more of risks evolving quickly in terms of IT risks, in terms of regulatory risks. So when they are trying to operate and deliver to the customer, our solution always has to be to include business continuity at the beginning, at the outset, thereby to inculcate in part of the culture of the company. So these lead into the drivers of change of regulation, environment, technology, and customer. I think it's quite a controversial slide, this one, in terms of resilience and business continuity just being spoken about. Well, in terms of EY's approach, one of the few discussions we've had is in terms of how do we differentiate these various terms. I wish we had a formal education as well. But in terms of how the solution is being structured to deliver. Now we talk about incident emergency crisis, and then post that as business continuity plan and a program to cater to it. Now these talk about operational, financial, safety, and reputational risks. But there is something called a proactive treatment and there's something called a reactive treatment. In terms of proactive treatment, we're talking about legal risks being treated, part of GRCs, risk registers, etc., which usually don't come as part of the business continuity program. If an organization successfully implements its risk mitigation strategies along with a business continuity plan that enables them in building resilience to certain risks, that is the next part we're looking at in terms of predictive modeling for these business continuity aspects. I think we are, as audience, everybody's educated in terms of benefits of BCM. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, which talks about disasters. Well, these disasters have been chosen in terms of the utilities field. However, if you notice, it is a point to make in terms of the impact they have. Each disaster has its own impact, be it operational, financial, reputational, or in terms of safety aspects. But however, in the long-term run, all these impacts seem to indirectly impact each other, leading to a fall of a company. Apparently, 37% of the companies which face a huge disaster are not capable enough of restoring themselves after a crisis impact. And that is the market as of today. So in terms of how do we go ahead and summarize in terms of the top 10 risks in utilities, the next page talk about 4 different aspects. We consider people aspect, which is the stakeholder confidence. We talk about the operational aspect, which is the operational agility. We talk about the external stakeholders, like the other speakers talked about previously, in terms of customer reach, in terms of customer delivery, also to be an important agenda. So we have customer reach as one part, and then we have cost competitiveness. As to what is the basic significant shifts in today's economy, so a major drive. We're talking about improving operational maturity in a time where there's a lot of fall down in the economy. So how is BCP going to be implemented to counter these risks? So in terms of a stakeholder confidence, talks about political intervention in power utilities market, talks about lobbying, talks about changing regulations. And operational is also talking about the war for talent, where we always see the people talent being increased, and there's always a mitigation strategy need to be placed. And thankfully, there's educational issues coming up. In terms of customer reach, again, economic shocks, and resulting in short-term energy demand shocks. So there's also seasonal attributes, geographical attributes of requirement for utilities delivery. So encountering these are also the certain risks that we talked about. Cost competitiveness. Now, in terms of commodity price volatility, now let me give an example. So in terms of indirect impact, the recent things which we come across is we start developing the BIAs and risk assessment for the utility sector. And then we realize that the falling prices of oil per barrel is also involving or indirectly impacting upon the utility sector vastly, which is leading to people being cut off. Now, it is very difficult for us to say, let's revisit the risk assessment yearly, but with an outlook of sustenance, saying over the years we will improve the maturity, having a roadmap, saying in the next 3 years where we're going to reach, what is the goal which we have, what is the maturity we have in terms of people, site, and technology. That is a roadmap for every client or every utility industry to have, to say these are the goals we achieve over the year to improve our business continuity. Well, in terms of guidelines for effective business continuity, we're talking about consistent processes now. In terms, it needs to be very simple and specific. We're talking about 5-phase approach, talking about understanding the process, talking about doing business impact analysis, doing risk assessment and the process understanding, then we do the training and testing phase. But in these 5 phases, we need to fix a common approach across on how to develop. For example, we have seen in terms of estimating the importance of processes in this business impact analysis, the quantification of how big the legal impact is, how big the financial impact is, how big the operational impact is, needs to be quantified. It needs the top leadership management's involvement to sit and say, if one day of my operation is offset, this is the return of investment or that net revenue, the gross income that I'm losing. At a certain point, this is what becomes critical to me. That is quantification. Once I quantify, I'll be able to sit with the process owners and get the exact MAO values. If I don't quantify it, then for every process owner, his process is most critical. He needs it immediately. Only if there is a top management involvement in saying this is a financial, regulatory, and operational risk, you'll be able to drive them to deep depth analysis and quantify it by the BIAs. Now, in terms of other aspects of risk appetite, something that we believe in the coming days the standards will start driving the regulation to. In terms of organization, starting a business continuity or incident crisis and emergency management with the risk appetite and say, all right, if I'm going to do a business continuity in the terms of crisis, I would have 50 to 60% of output, with 30% of people involved with these sites being secure. Without a policy or an agenda or a risk appetite put across, it is very difficult to audit or implement something that aligns to these objectives. So quantification of objectives, aligning the specific requirement during business continuity. As a company, what will you achieve during business continuity or crisis? Brings to the next step of question, is it resumption they are looking at, or is it recovery? In terms of invocation of business continuity, am I saying, if I'm producing 100,000 barrels of oil, am I saying with the disaster coming in, I will produce 100,000 barrels of oil? Or am I saying I'll start a resumption of 50,000 barrels of oil, and over the week start building the requirement to 200,000 barrels of oil? The distinction between how I bring it up. My business continuity plan has to, at the end, say, okay, the critical processes are being done the first week, and over the coming weeks, we have the non-critical processes coming back and comes back to normalcy. That is a complete business continuity plan. And in terms of clear roles and responsibilities, we always see a mix, because ownership is always with, as we have seen, health and safety. If it is business continuity, if it is IPDR, it goes with CIO. And it's very difficult for them to come to a common term, because this is one such program that speaks to every department. Every roles and responsibility for people being involved at every single level. So you get to interact with a complete organization, but if there's no complete specific role or ownership from the top management, the program falls flat. So we always advise that there's new projects coming into place. The development of a facility. Are we talking about development of a complete building? Inculcate part of it. Have business continuity as a part of it. Do your understanding of that facility through BIA. Understanding of risks through risk assessment. Have your operation strategy through strategy development. Therefore, the whole approach of 22301 applies across, and it's sustainable. Now, so this is the guidelines usually we're talking about in terms of also the social media coverage, the reputational impact, the leverage of PR. There are different airlines recently going through disasters, and you will see upon other airlines not being spoken about after the disaster because they have a good business continuity plan for their PR, they have a good business continuity plan for the branding, they have a good business continuity plan for the reputation. It's not only about experiencing a disaster, but also how you come out of it. That's the point of a business continuity, right? So in terms of managing your reputational impact, in today's world with social media is also very critical. And I think with coming days, the guidelines, the requirements will be more focused on the reputational aspects and how the customer sees it as well. In terms of even, I think business continuity shot into importance with 9/11 and Merrill Lynch was one such company, I'm sure quite a few are aware, which had no people, no fatalities, and resumed operations within 1.5 hours with Merrill Lynch business continuity. Business continuity officer Howard claimed to be a failure because he wanted to resume in an hour. There was a half an hour increase. So they went back to understand what is the reason, right? When I sit across with a BIA person and ask them, how long do you accept your outage to be? He says 3 hours. I need to account for the escalation within the 3 hours. I need to account for the incident management escalation of business continuity within the 3 hours. And that's where technology is helping us. Most of the BCP plans develop strategies for the 3 hours, however, without considering the invocation process. That was one such case of the Merrill Lynch where it came 1.5 hours, because half an hour was talking about incident and crisis management, and the rest 100 for resolution. So these are learning lessons which we take consistently and try to implement across for the existing BCPs we're doing in UAE as well. Now, as we all know, benefits, that leads to a robust BCP, reduces risk, minimizes downtime, and protects the brand image. Talking about improving the ratings. Well, these are the recent surveys, and this is the requirements that came in from the utility sector. We spoke about for different water and utility authorities. They are aware of these aspects the more and more we speak to them. So we are trying to educate the industry as well. The return of investment, as I always say, it can be quantified in terms of money, the risks and the brand reputation, etc. But there are smaller things I think is left out. Like the moment we went on to an oil and gas facility and did a PCP, which resulted in them changing all the SLAs and the contracts with all the vendors in terms of understanding of this is the requirement they need. It led to them improving their standard operating procedures. It led to them identifying and improving their HR database of people's numbers. It improved in identifying people who are hired, vendors who are brought on board. Do they have business continuity or not? It improved in the culture change in the company where safety was a lot more, leave of absence was a lot less, because they had more responsibilities as a social change, as a social awareness. It led into people's lives in terms of societal improvement as well. That's what 2230 talks about as well. Right? So these, I think, are apart from the return of investment of technical terms, we also have the benefit of returns in terms of other aspects. Right, so this I think is spoken about in terms of BIA phases and risk assessments. I'm going to skip this. Implementing BCD, again, as EY's point of view, we always do it on from end-to-end, incident, emergency, crisis, ITDRPs, communication plans, business continuity plans, the whole manual for it. So this, we seem to think it works at one goal because it involves all stakeholders, therefore it implement comprehensively for a resilience in the company. Right. So conclusion, we're talking about a feasible solution in place, and we've managed to go ahead, EY as a team has managed to go ahead and implement it across various sectors because of the easier approach and solution that we've got from the learnings of different utility sectors and different markets that we've been involved in. We're also looking at various local strategies which involve to improve the efficiency of business continuity. So we're looking to do a testing phase more relevant after every single phase of business continuity to see does it align to the requirement or not. So these are the improvements that we come up with. In the brochure talks about EY's team and EY's differentiator. I believe a conversation to tell you how much EY has done and then tell you what projects we've won. So that's, I'm leaving that part of the brochure, and that's about it from me. So please feel free to visit our stall as well, and it'll be great to have a conversation with you all. Thank you so much.